All right, welcome to Floor is Yours here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, an expansion or extension of 5 on the Floor. We'll go through who we've got here in a second. Do want to tell you, though, that we are sponsored, as we always are now on Floor is Yours, by everythingtradeshows.com. Check out everythingtradeshows.com. If your company is going back to trade shows, which everybody was starting to do before this latest variant, but I don't think it's going to stop them, but you may not have your whole crew intact at this point. So you need to reach out to Everything Trade Shows because they can basically design the best possible booth for you to get you in front of people again. Businesses need to be back out in front of people. You can see some of the companies that they work with. There's some big names on there. You see Microsoft. You see a great local company in Citrix. Again, they will do the entire thing from you, from soup to nuts, beginning to end. They'll do the entire booth build. If you mention 5 Reasons, they will do the booth rendering for you for free. So they'll show you exactly what it's going to look like. Reach out to our guy, Chris Chase. He was actually at our last watch party, watching the Heat come back against the Detroit Pistons. You can find him at 954. Blow it up for me, Manny. I got it. 791. He's at the Panther game. 791-8882. 954-791-8882. There it is. The first thing that goes in your old age is your eyes. Even if you have LASIK, I can tell you that. Go to everythingtradeshows.com, based right here off of Las Olas. I was actually just right across the street from their offices. But they service all 50 states. Okay, so reach out to Chris. Tell your boss that's where you want to go. Support local. Support those who support us. Support Miami sports fans. All right, we are also sponsored by Prize Picks. We always mention that at the beginning. We'll mention it more at the end. Use that code 5, F-I-V-E. Did a show with David Eversole and David Friedman, which is up right now. I like under what the hell is the name of the Saints quarterback tonight? The guy they paid $5 billion for doing nothing.
Taysom Hill.
There you go. Like I went under 185 passing yards for him because, again, he's just going to get paid to do nothing again tonight. So that's where I went. PrizePicks.com. Use the code 5. All right, here's who we got. Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. I don't recognize Alex Toledo with a collared shirt, but you can follow him at Tropical Blanket. And crazy. Bryan Young, you can find him on Postup5R or on Twitter at Bryan is the King, of course, with a Y, not an I. We make sure that. And here's how Gabriel starts with us, and I know Gabriel from Twitter. Time to panic. That's how this show begins. And this is after, in the pre-show, which took about 30 seconds, I said to Greg and Bryan, we are not going to do the panic thing tonight. We've done that for the past 48 hours. Greg and I turned out the most depressing podcast last night that I think we've ever done. We just want to get that thing over with. We are solution-oriented tonight. We have enough. We have enough on this show, and the Heat better have enough. I'm thinking that's going to be our next T-shirt. Just we have enough. 5 on the floor. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to be solution-oriented tonight. How do they survive this stretch? Okay, I'm not going to sunshine pump you. I'm not going to tell you that they're going to win 80% of their games without Bam Adebayo. They're not. But they have to stay above water somehow so they don't end up in a play-in situation when people start to come back, okay, Bam and Vic and others. So we're going to start here, and I'll let Bryan start because he's the guest tonight. He's on the hot seat. If you were Eric Spoelstra right now, and he said, we got to come up with some things. And he's come up with things before when they've had injuries. Bosch went out. Deng goes to the floor. What would you do? What would be the one move that you would start with? Oh, I think Bryan, unmute.
It's a weird mic. My heart wants to say KZ Okpala, but that is a horrible decision. So I'm going to say, actually, I think a lot of PJ at the 5. I'm not sure how much longer Markieff Morris is going to be out, but I honestly think that this season he's basically proven to be a 5. So you only really need to survive until he comes back, and then you can play him a lot. Spot UD minutes, and I say spot because, again, I don't trust my guy KZ. I think that you may have to see some of what Omer Yurtseven can provide you, but it's gonna be a committee thing. Maybe we even see a bit of Jimmy at the 5. You just go super small. It's not gonna be easy, but we're not panicking. They'll be fine. It's good. We know that this isn't the complete version of the team. They just gotta, like you mentioned, they just gotta keep the heads above water. And maybe you look at a free agent big. Maybe you look at a Harry Giles. You see what you can get. Maybe you see on the trade market if there's some guy who hasn't been playing that wants out, and maybe you could plug and play him. But there are options here. There are options here for them to at least stall until Bam gets back.
Greg, this is, I go back and I keep going back to these two teams, and I was doing some research because I covered both of them home and road, probably 75 games of each of them. 2001, 2001, and 2015, 2016. These are the two teams we keep talking about. Zoe out for 69 games. Bosh obviously out at the All-Star break. Both of those teams adjusted and had very good seasons, okay? And it didn't end the way that they wanted it to, but they had very good seasons. But I went back and I actually found a column that I wrote for the Palm Beach Post talking about the merits of Dwayne Coswell at the 5, filling in for Alonzo Mourning. They gave Dwayne Coswell about 4 games and then decided, F that, okay, we're not going to be conventional here. And that team went with Brian Grant at the 5, put Bruce Bowen in the starting lineup along with Anthony Mason and rolled that way. I feel like even though Dedmon started this game and he was the only guy who was a plus, I do agree with Brian that Spoelstra's tendency here is going to be go unconventional because that's typically the way that the Heat have done things.
I think you're right, but I don't think to start the game that's how it'll happen. I think Dedmon will remain the starter and he'll stay relatively traditional in the lineup. Once Jimmy is back, I think that's something that we just all have to brace ourselves for, like getting through this stretch before I talk about, kind of how they can size down is they need Jimmy. Like they can't play without Jimmy and Bam. Like every game they play like that, I'm expecting them to lose go forward. So they need Jimmy. That's step one. I think Dedmon continues to start, but Brian's onto some stuff. Like I think they're going to size down in a really big way. If these guys started hitting shots, I don't think that this would be this, like the backcourt specifically. I don't think that this would be as daunting as it looks or feels right now. But right now, you just, with those guys' regression, and now you don't have Bam, you feel like you're running out of options. But if those guys would just kind of shoot at their more level set percentages that we know them to be capable of shooting, it would help a lot of this. I really think Jimmy and Tyler can carry the offense. It's the defense that I'm worried about.
Alex, what would you do? I mean, we'll get into the shooters a little bit later, but do you go with sort of a conventional rotation? Dedmon starts, just plug in another big. I know Yurt was +1 last night. He played 2 minutes, but yeah, Alex, how would you handle that?
So, I'm good with Dedmon starting, but it's obvious to me. I'm more interested, like if you're gonna keep starting him there, that means you're clearly gonna be dropping a lot more than switching when you're talking about like the base defense. So that's obviously a pretty important change when you talk about the way to like evaluate this team and how they profile on defense. But then after that, I would probably be staggering PJ and Dedmon. Like PJ is maybe the backup 5. Whenever Markieff Morris comes back, maybe you could play them together. I think I'm good with Markieff as a 4 or 5. Just get a little bit creative there. But as far as right now, without Jimmy, without Markieff, obviously without Bam, obviously without Victor Oladipo, there's going to be a lot of sizing down for sure. We've already seen a whole lot of it, right? So we know what it's going to look like. There's going to be a lot of zone. And again, shout out to Cooper Moorhead, who consistently does incredible Heat writing. And in his article today was talking about how the more you throw out zone, the less effective it gets. So that's where you start trying to like figure out that balance, right? Where how much zone do you want to play when you're throwing out the small ball lineups? And so it's a little bit dangerous, but I do think they have enough to survive because you do know they're going to get Jimmy back, even if it's not within the next handful of games. Like Jimmy coming back is going to be that stabilizing presence because as of right now, with all those guys out, it's a lot of pressure on Kyle and Hero to be like these consistent scoring threats. Obviously, Hero's already there, but Kyle wasn't trying to do that throughout the regular season. And you're obviously expecting a whole lot from Duncan Robinson to be that shooter for you every night.
No, I got you. And a lot of comments have come in, so I'm going to try to address some of them that have come in. We won't address that one, but we got a bunch of others.
I'm wearing a Guayabera because I'm from Hialeah, so
there you go. So this one, no. Thank you for throwing that one up. No chance of re-signing Myers Leonard. Can we keep scheming to give up the 3 to deny the paint fully? If we rely on zone, we may deny neither with the personnel.
I'm with you. No zone. Get rid of that gimmicky crap. Well, I think
he's not going to, though.
While Jimmy's out, I think he has to. Yeah, he's at the mercy of the personnel. But I mean, you guys think that they're going to have to consistently play, like literally Bam is the difference between going to the full zone versus in spots?
Yes.
Man.
But not that he's going to play the zone the whole game, but just I don't think they're going to do that with those starting lineups. But we've seen it a lot with the bench, especially like if Dedmon is starting. I mean, you could still play him with bench lineups, but that presumes that PJ is going to be that backup 5, especially like right now in the short term. You can switch with PJ at the 5. So there's a way to minimize the zones here, but also I don't think so because they're already so small as it is. I think with Jimmy back, when they get their guys back, they don't need to zone at all because they're just a normal sized team that doesn't need to make up for a bunch of deficiencies, right? But I just think like we're forgetting how good they looked when they were all healthy and like some of his gimmicky stuff wasn't
only
necessary.
11 games. Brady had the stat today. There's only 11 games that their big four has played together, which was one of the concerns coming into the season that I talked about a lot, which was health with this.
I'm just happy it's a big four, to be honest.
Well, right. No, it did become the big four to a certain degree, but that's been a problem. Just because Jason Spo needs to be more creative with his defense. Zone can't be the fallback every time. I think that Greg agrees with you. There was another comment that came in, though, about how the Heat have all these dead spots on the roster, and it actually forgot one. Vic is still a dead spot until he plays. I mean, they literally have right now.
I called it irresponsible.
Right. I mean, KZ, the open spot, UD, Omer to a certain degree because he doesn't want to play him, right? And Vic, and now Bam and Morris, right? I mean, it's half the damn roster.
Functionally, basketball-wise, there is no argument to be made that they should be keeping all those guys on the roster. Like, sorry, I love you, D. I'm literally wearing a OG 40 T-shirt right now. But, like, if he can't get run right now, it's functionally on the basketball court. It's irresponsible to
he should get playing time if they're going to continue with, like, no Markieff. Hey, him and Omer just, battle it out.
I'm with you guys, but
I don't love the 8-man rotation thing, by the way. So that's why I'm with these guys playing.
Let's pivot a little from the basketball side to sort of the other thing that may or may not be irresponsible here. And I'll let Bryan start on this and then go to Greg. The thing that could be irresponsible here is not going into the tax if you really think that you have to keep this team above water. Okay, so Bryan, I mean, Greg and I and Alex, we've talked about this numerous times. I'm going to let you go for it. If how good does the player have to be in your view? And I don't think there's anybody out there right now who qualifies. Okay, but buyouts, trades, that kind of thing. Like, how good does the player have to be, Bryan, for them to go into the tax early, which is going to put them in a repeater tax situation, which may hamstring them down the line?
In that case, I would think that the player would have to be pretty, like, again, we're expecting Bam to be back in 2 months, something around there.
I mean, we have it at 8 to 12 weeks. ESPN has it at 4 to 6 weeks. So
2 to 3 months. I mean, but you're still expecting Bam back by the second half of the season. And I'm not sure if getting a stopgap big is worth going to the repeater tax. And then you're also considering, like, you want to convert Caleb Martin to that final roster spot, right? If you don't, then he only has, I don't know, however many days left in the NBA.
50 total.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many he has remaining now. So that could be a problem. I don't think that you want to, burn those days and have to send him to the G League. And now you're missing out on a rotation player because you're using that final spot on a big. So I think that if you're going to go through all of that, the player has to be a really solid contributor. And I don't really see anybody, on the free agent market that's like that. Again, maybe trade, different conversation, but I don't know who's out there. I don't know who would be worth that final spot. But as of right now, I just can't really see anybody that's going to be worth the consequences of filling that roster spot.
I want to address one comment because I knew this was going to come up today because Bam said himself after the game 6 weeks. But I will tell you our information has stayed consistent on this. So I don't know what they've told him specifically, but we're still hearing it's going to be longer than 6 weeks. That's the most likely.
That's great. Scenario. I mean, I'll be wrong and I'll be happy to be wrong. Jeez.
We'll be happy to be wrong on that, but I know we got that from 3 different places. So, I mean, if they're telling him 6, terrific. I'll believe it when I see it that it'll actually be 6 weeks. That's an interesting point there. Lonzo and Lowry both averaging 12.5 on 42% coming last game, and nobody's complaining about Lonzo. All right, let's transition to the backcourt. This is a good place for us to go now. Okay, you're starting back. You're not benching Kyle Lowry, right? But like your starting backcourt right now has been really unproductive offensively. Okay, so Alex, I'll go to you on this. Because Greg and I talked about it last night and you didn't have a chance to get in. Does the Bam injury change the equation on getting Hero into the starting lineup? Because simply you need more in the starting lineup now that you don't have Bam. Would that be the impetus? Because you have not been in favor of starting Hero. I don't think any of us have yet. But does this change it in any way?
So would what be the impetus? I lost you there for like 5 seconds.
Bam's absence now, assuming Jimmy's return here in the next week, okay, or whatever. Hero's going to start until Jimmy comes back, I would assume. Yeah. But once Jimmy comes back, just to get more firepower in the starting lineup, because you don't have Bam, who you run a lot of stuff through, right? You're not going to run as much through Dedmon.
So Jimmy at the 4?
Do you need to start Tyler and just sit Duncan, okay, as much as I've been against that move for a variety of reasons, just to get more offense in the starting lineup?
I don't think it's like a bad idea or anything, just like standing on its own, but I don't look at that as something likely, to be honest. I just think they're not at that point yet, and the way that Spo talks about it, it doesn't seem like he's really near that. Like, maybe they've all like subtly acknowledged in the media conferences that it is kind of mental. Not, they're not really saying that. They're not acknowledging it and saying that outright. But you know what I'm saying? The way that they're talking about it is kind of, there's a lot of implications going on. But I don't think they're at the point where they're going to be benching him anytime soon. I would be shocked too. So that's why it's hard to talk about it as an idea. But it's not a terrible idea. Like, Hero is obviously just a better player at this point. Maybe that's the type of kick in the ass that'll get Duncan going, right? Like, for all I know, he gets hot as a bench guy, and he just kind of gets it all back together, and he turns back into Duncan Robinson or something a lot closer to the Duncan Robinson that we've seen the past 2 seasons. I just don't expect that. But if you're talking about the Jimmy at the 4 stuff, that would be fun, right? But like I said, in those 3 minutes of playing time that Duncan and Hero are together, negative 145 net rating, which obviously means everything in 3 minutes of playing time.
But actually, we saw
that's not going to happen either, though.
It didn't look good last night either. Hero and Robinson playing together didn't look good last night. I guess.
That was before last night's minutes.
Before last night, Brian. I guess if they go so small, like down the stretch, like, I mean, let's say that they even get into any close games. Okay, I mean, could you go? I guess it would be until Oladipo and Bam are back. Tucker, Lowry, but Jimmy at the 4 with Tucker at the 5, right? Lowry, Robinson, Hero. Is that even doable?
It's gonna have to be. I mean, those are your 5 best players, unless it's one of those nights where Strus or Gabe is hot. Then I think those are the 5 guys that Spo trusts most in the roster. So there's gonna be moments where it's ugly, but you got to do what you got to do. And at the end of the day, to take Alex's term, you're paying Duncan Robinson for a reason, right? So he needs to be able to show up in those moments where, even despite how bad the season's been for him personally, with Bam gone, he's gonna have to show up. So I fully expect Spo to have that faith in him, right? He's starting him for a reason. They're paying him that money for a reason. You got to play and you got to shoot well.
Well, they're paying, as Zip mentions here, they're paying Kyle Lowry twice as much as they're paying Duncan Robinson, and I feel like although Duncan certainly deserves everything that's happening right now, I feel like Kyle has skated a little bit, other than maybe on our program. But Greg, if you look at the Robinson situation now, I think if they had everybody, they might sit him down for a couple days and just let him clear his head, but they can't. They don't have enough bodies to be able to do that. And you and I, we've talked about it in this, Greg, when Alex and I talked about it in this context the other night before it got even worse last night. I mean, he played 20 minutes last night. Not only did he miss every shot, no rebounds, no assists. The only thing he put up was fouls. Like, I mean,
they made one of them graphics for him, like the graphic you never want to have. I think, what was the guy from the Milwaukee Bucks that had
Tony Snell.
Tony
it was
Snell,
like
thank
33
you.
minutes and
put Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the worst games I've literally ever seen. Okay. I don't, and I do feel like they would sit him down at this
It was
stage.
so bad in the arena, by the way, because you already know how loud those rim mics are when there's a miss. Like, they're way louder than the switches. It's already bad every time there's a miss, but it's like 0 for 9. Just imagine hearing it over and over and over again. And then you can feel the tension with the fence. Tell me I'm wrong about this. You can feel the tension
no.
every time Duncan misses a three.
No,
It's like,
no, you can't.
Oh
I mean,
my God.
he has the yips, but the thing is, the more that you think about the yips, the worse the yips get. That's the problem. I mean, it feels to me like he just needs, and everybody says get a layup. He doesn't put himself in position.
But I was
to get a
talking
layup.
about the fans too.
What the hell is the yips?
The yips. He's got the yips. You
You
never
know
heard
what
of the
the
yips?
yips are?
The yips
I never
are
heard
okay.
that term.
It's like a golfer who has putted all his life, okay, and suddenly can't make a putt. It's Chuck Knobloch, the old second baseman who couldn't throw the ball to first, or Mackey
I'm
Sasser
following
couldn't
you.
throw it back to the pitcher.
The dirty pants.
Markelle
we've seen-
Fultz.
Markelle Fultz. You know who had the yips? And he played both. He played baseball, but I think he played something. Rick Ankiel, who came from this area, who was a pitcher who all of a sudden could not throw the ball over the plate anymore. I watched him in high school. He's one of the best pitchers I've ever seen. He threw 95 in high school. Couldn't throw the ball over the plate. They converted him to an outfielder because they had to teach him to hit because he couldn't throw anymore. I mean, I don't know that we're at that level with Duncan. Guys, but it feels like we're getting there. I keep saying this. I think at first it wasn't mental, but I think that once he couldn't adjust to what defenses were doing, to the other players on his team, the way that the supposed schemes had changed, he started missing, and now it has become mental, in part because what Alex is talking about, which is he hears the social media stuff, he hears it in this crowd, and he knows that people are down on him right now. Like I do think, Greg, they would just shut him down for a few days, but they can't.
No, they can't. I mean, like, but you do have to take a step back and say, like, they were missing Jimmy and Bam, and he only played 20 minutes. Like, that's essentially as close as Spo can get to putting him on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
What did that comment just say? I was trying to read.
You
and
have to
talk
watch
at the same
How
time.
I Met Your Mother. They talk about it on the.
I have not ever watched that before. Sorry,
I
I don't
watched
really
it.
watch TV, folks. Sorry.
Wow.
Yes.
Hot take.
That's what I'd say. I mean, Brian, what would you do with him? You can't send him in the G League right now.
No, honestly, see, I'm not qualified to psychoanalyze Duncan, but I feel like if you send him to the bench, it's gonna get worse. Like if he's stressed and freaking out now about living up to the contract and shooting poorly, and now having to make up with Jimmy and Bam out, imagine how much worse it's gonna be if he's on the bench. And I also feel like there's some perspective here in that it's been 2 months, or I guess technically the regular season started end of October, so a little over a month he shot poorly. I want to say that as I said, like, you have to empower him. You have to be like, hey man, it's been about a month and a half, you're struggling, but your whole basketball career, not even just talking about the NBA, college, high school, probably middle school, elementary school, his one elite skill has been shooting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if he was an average shooter, all other basketball skills the same, he probably wouldn't be in the NBA.
Right.
And I'm not saying that to be a jerk to Duncan. I'm saying that his skill is so elite that took him from being, just a 6'8" guy on the street to making $90 million, right? And you kind of have to say, like, you're struggling. I get it. Here's a psychologist. He's a therapist. We're going to ride with you until you get back to what you've been doing your whole life. There really is no other option. And at this point in the season, you have to, right? Like, if you sit him, you just lost a body on a handicapped team.
Right. Here's the thing about it, Brian, is that, again, it has to be mental because I've watched him in warmups. Like, I mean, his shooting form looks the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Duncan forgot to shoot. It would be impossible. Like, it's all, and he's talked about that before, I believe. I think he had a quote about, stressing a little bit about living up to the contract.
Well, it's interesting. I very rarely get like a tweet response to me or a DM that makes me think in this way, but I got one on Instagram today who basically said that what Duncan has is imposter syndrome, that he's a guy who has never expected to be in this position. Like you talk about, this was his one elite skill, but again, he went to like a small private high school. He went to a tiny little college, right?
He talked to his coach.
Right. We talked to his coach that he was never supposed to be here. Like he went to Michigan and he wasn't relied upon until very late in that year. He doesn't get drafted. Even the Heat really didn't put him on the front burner in terms of their development. And he just became this he just bloomed. Okay. In part because I think Spoelstra believed in him, but obviously they worked with him. And that he just doesn't believe he should even be here at this point. And maybe it just all hit him at once. Like psychoanalyzing is challenging in these circumstances, but I've never seen this happen to a Heat shooter. Like I was going back through it today. Mario Chalmers was the only recent one I could find, but there was a
But
reason
he ain't
for it.
Duncan, so it's like it's
No,
different.
he's not Duncan, but he shot 38% in LeBron's last year here from 3, and the year after he shot 28%. He fell off the map, okay? But there was a reason for that. He wasn't getting set up by LeBron anymore.
I mean, this is a guy who's supposed to be a better shooter than G Money, than Glenn Rice, and he's struggling. Like, so that's like, if you really go in the archives, did Vashawn Leonard ever have a streak like this?
Vashawn, I looked at Wayne Ellington, I looked at Jason Capono, although he didn't get that.
Never missed a 3, as far as I remember. Not once.
No, not once. No, never, ever. I mean, all of the. I mean, James Jones never fell off like this, and for him, it was just a lack of playing time. Mike Miller, it was health. I've never seen. Yeah, Johnson. I even went back because I had a recollection of Hardaway having a soft year, and literally all of Tim's 3-point shooting percentages were within 3% of each other. Like we've literally have not. Dion is the one other example, but I think that was the I don't give a shit thing. I think that was he went from 40% to 30% after he got the contract.
He was just an all-star during that time.
Yes,
flat out.
The 1 year, and then it fell off the map. All right, so here's where none of these guys had all that money next to their names. That's the difference. Yeah, I mean, again, I think it is psychological, mental. I don't know, how he gets out of it. None of us is qualified to say, as Bryan said, but that's the issue. This question comes in. Can we discuss how defenders are playing, Duncan? Here's the thing. He's missing open shots, right?
Yeah, like it transcends that. There was a point where that was an honest conversation, and I thought that there were moments where we were expecting Duncan to do things that were actually not really there for him, like being able to take a couple dribbles and get a shot. Like they were just, I don't know, the way they were defending him, but now it's different. Like now he's not even attempting 2-point field goals. Like I tweeted something about this last night, and we talked about it on 5 on the Floor. Like my high school coach said, if you were in a slump, go get a layup, go get a free throw, get something close to the basket, and then you get your rhythm back, and then you build your way back out. Like you had to actually warm up like that when I was in high school, and now Duncan doesn't even attempt a 2-point field goal.
Yeah. Let's transition to the other backcourt guy, Kyle Lowry. Last night took 9 shots, made 2.
By the way, can I say?
Yes.
So from Nikias's piece, and I know I mentioned this the other day too. Before the Cavs game, Duncan on both standstill and open shots was around 30%. And that was before he missed 9 threes versus Cleveland. So just to give you some context.
And I'll say the ones against Cleveland were open. They were largely open. They're not playing him quite the same way. And that's the other problem with that before we transition to Lowry. The biggest argument that everybody always makes for Duncan, and I've made this same argument, is gravity.
I mean, they had big wing defenders on him, but
no, I get it, but they're not guarding him with 2. He's not stretching the floor for others the way that he did. And that was the argument for him. Like if you were to make an argument for him over Strus or anybody else, it was, well, with Duncan, you're creating openings for others because of the way they play him. Well, if they stop playing him I'm not going to say they're going to play him like Justice Winslow, but if they just play him the way they play Max Strus, okay? Then you cannot make an argument for Duncan Robinson over Max Strus because the argument is gravity and efficiency. And right now, the gravity seems to be equal and the efficiency is better with Strus, as is the athleticism. And that's the issue. This is a good question from Kaz. And I will say I'm disappointed by this, okay? And this is part of why my whole vibe on Kyle has changed a little bit. I really thought he would get into Heat shape. Maybe, was I optimistic here, Bryan? Like, I don't know. He can't get by anybody.
I don't know if it's. I mean, Kyle is. He's a world-class athlete. Like he's in world-class shape. If you look at pictures of him, he looks shredded. Like I think that there is a natural. He's 35. There's going to be a natural decline. But I also think that he's still finding his role. Like I think it's again. Same applies to Duncan. It's a month and a half in the season, right? So I think it's going to take a little bit of time for him to adjust, figure out his role, and I don't think that he came into the season expecting that he was going to have to put up big numbers in the scoring department, or he came in to be essentially the Heat's best playmaker, make things easier for Jimmy, Bam, and Hero, and be the best point of attack defender they've had in years. But like outside of that, I don't think he was expecting to have to have a big role as a scorer, and I think that having to make that transition, is something that we have to give him a little bit of time to adjust to. So I think Kyle will be fine. Like, the guy's a champion. He's a multiple-time All-Star. He's been one of the best point guards in the NBA for years. And this is probably, me doing the, hope trafficking a little bit, trying to, give him a little bit of leeway, being positive. But man, I believe in Kyle. I'm not gonna poo-poo Kyle because he's been struggling by his standards. He's still been really good for, a few games. It's whatever. I ride with my guy.
I mean, like, let me just say this: the day that Brian is the king talks Lefty Leif off the ledge, we have entered new territory, because like, you talked me back into Kyle just now, because I've felt really down on him the last few games. But if you do look at his stats, like, I don't think that thinking that he would average more points per game was really realistic, quite frankly. The assists and the rebounds are where we expect them to be, but that's box score watching. I think, like, as you watch the team, you see where he could assert himself offensively, and he just hasn't yet. And that's where I think, to Brian's point about learning his role, he's now having to adjust as well, because there's going to be natural stretches now where he needs to take on more of an offensive load and think differently about the way he's playing. So now that's an adjustment as well. So it's just layers and layers upon layers of how they have to adjust.
It's interesting we talk about the conditioning thing, because I mean, the Heat literally had a weight clause in for Tim Hardaway that he couldn't stand, right? And Tim looked to me to be in better shape than Kyle's in. So that's it's an interesting thing. If you look back at Tim, I never thought Tim was fat. And
they built it into a few guys' contracts too.
Right. No, he was pissed about all that. He did not like that. And the assist to turnover ratio thing, like, they treated Tim like he was a scrub when he literally should be a Hall of Famer. Okay. And so it was a weird deal.
Do you imagine Kyle getting a 3? It was 3-1, right? That's insane.
It drove Tim crazy, but the weight clause drove him crazier. I can tell you he was never happy about that. And particularly because Zoe, never had to worry about any of that, because he came in chiseled every single year, but Tim obviously didn't. But I guess, Alex, it's interesting we talk about this, because yes, the rebounds and the assists are where we expected them to be, but to me, it is more of an eye test thing with Kyle, right? He's not turning the corner. He's not. I don't know. It feels. They tied up their whole future in him. Like, that's why I'm saying, like, I understand trying to adjust to your role, but like, it's pretty clear now when you're out there with 3 2-ways and Dwayne Dedmon, and you're the Hall of Famer, like,
start balling.
Yeah,
do something.
Yeah, that's how I've been feeling too. The one thing I will say is shout out to Gad. Once again, he was tweeting out numbers about the drives last night. The drive numbers were actually way up in a night where you're missing Jimmy and Bam, and Lowry actually led the team with 17 and Hero had 13. So that's actually pretty good for, the first game without Bam. Obviously, you're playing without Jimmy as well, like I said. And they were kind of talking post-game, like, they were really not ready for that Bam news just from a basketball end, right? Like, they didn't really change a lot as far of the game plan from the time that they found out to the game itself, or at least that's how they made it sound post-game that I was getting. So I thought that was interesting that despite that, you saw that. So that's a good sign, because I could not agree with you more. Obviously, that becomes even more obvious. You're just missing these guys who are doing all the heavy load work as far as rim pressure, right? And you're missing the 2 biggest guys who generate easy points from you at the basket, right? Because Bam, even though everybody wants him to be more aggressive and I want to be more aggressive, is still somebody who's getting you a lot of free throw attempts a game. And Lowry, so far this season, is only at 2, and it's just not good enough. When you just, outside of talking about 12 points a game or whatever, I thought he was going to be closer to 14, 15, to be honest, coming into the season. But I see now that he's like I said earlier, he's more that Rondo type, where from those Celtics years when he was kind of like making everybody else better, less worried about his own scoring. The thing with Lowry is, like, he's been turning up the scoring in like times when it's really necessary. It always feels like he kind of waits till the last second till he really has to turn it up, right? But every time he does it with the flip of a switch. So every time I'm starting to be concerned about it, I see him do it.
Well,
stretches and stretches. I'm like, okay, it's still in him.
Isn't that the same conversation we've had about Bam to a certain degree before he got hurt? It's like, well, it's in there.
I think Lowry has more control, and it's more like intentional as far as the way that he paces himself. He's more worried about setting up everybody, and he's supposed to, because he's the point guard. Bam was more just like that in nature because he just thinks of himself as a role player, I think, naturally, or did think of himself as one. Whereas Lowry is like that. That's his role, is to be that point guard. But every single time, I think it's more of like, he's 35, he's pacing himself, and he's probably going to try to turn up the scoring stuff in the playoffs, is what I would think. But he can still do it.
Rondo. You mentioned Rondo.
He's just a way better shooter,
Yes, but you mentioned Rondo, and I remember Rondo having some scoring games against the Heat when other guys were not giving it to the Heat, okay? And if you had Pierce or Allen or Garnett, who was out for an extended period of time, as limited as Rajon was and is as a scorer, he would attempt to score, okay? And they have to get that from him right now. I just want to pivot before we close here, and again, use the code 5 at prizepicks.com. Is there any, we'll do this each in 15 seconds. Tyler Hero, I think, has rightfully so escaped criticism this year because he has been above and beyond what everybody expected. Is he capable of more right now? Because I feel like we may start to see his efficiency start to come down because there's more of a burden on him that teams don't have to worry about Bam. They obviously don't have to worry about Duncan right now. Lowry doesn't seem to want to be worried about. And so I feel like there's going to be more attention on Tyler. We're going to start to see some of those percentages come down. What can he do, Greg, that's better than what he's done already? Can he carry them for a stretch?
He needs to keep the percentages where they are on increased volume. Like, quite frankly, I hate to say that because really functionally he's likely to lose some efficiency with the higher usage. But I guess the other thing would be if he is going to lose efficiency, then let's shoot for like 24, 25 a game. You know what I mean? Like let's try to go volume score. If that's if he is going to lose the efficiency, then let's just hope we gain some points per game.
Is he ready to carry them in that way, Brian?
Sure. Why not? He's 21-year-old. Sky's the limit for the kid. Like, it feels weird calling him a kid. I'm 24, man.
I can call him a kid.
Like, I don't see why not. Like, Tyler Hero was born to score. So I don't see why he can't turn it up a notch with Jimmy and Bam out. I believe in him.
Can he? Alex?
I think he could take on a bigger load for sure. I think that the skill leap that he's shown this season and how consistent he's been and the ways that he gets to his spots, all the different ways that he can score and create stuff, it's shown that he could take on a bigger load. Not that you want him to be your number one guy or anything going forward, but especially with Jimmy out, specifically with Jimmy out, he needs to be that guy. And I think he showed a lot yesterday. And the commenter, Jason, who just mentioned that yesterday he was struggling when Lowry Markkanen was guarding him, is fair, right? Like he's had times where it's like, okay, he should have been able to get past that guy and make something happen there, right? But all of this stuff is really like nitpicking because at the end of the day, I feel like this is the first time I said that in weeks, by the way.
It is.
He's just really a lot better than we thought he would be at this point, right? Just the way that he's played from the start of the season up to this point. He's way ahead of schedule. So like you said, he's eluded that criticism, but he's going to have to do more. I think right now it's like we expected a lot more from Lowry as a scorer. And so like the shift is onto him a little bit. And obviously Duncan, of course, was the mascot for everything wrong with the Heat right now. But, as far as Heat fans, but like it's really going to be on Kyle and Tyler to step up to a level that they haven't had to do, right? Where Tyler is as a professional or Kyle is somebody who hasn't had to do that in years at this point because he's kind of been playing this, traditional point guard role for years now.
I will say this. Tyler Hero may end up losing the sixth man of the year because he may play too many games in the starting lineup, which screws up my bet at BetUS. But this is the stretch that could make him an all-star, potentially. We know that Bam's slot is not going to be used right now. And there's a real opportunity if Tyler can keep them afloat during this stretch by giving them 24 to 27 a night, then he's going to be in that conversation. So this is his opportunity. And you're right. He wants to be the one someday. Here's the thing about this. At least with Tyler, we know he's an alpha. There's no question about that. With Bam, that was a question that we had for sure. All right. Thanks, everybody, for following tonight. Thanks to Brian for joining us in the fourth seat. Thanks to Alex for wearing a nice shirt. Thanks to Greg for always wearing the hat. And
polo shirts are collared shirts, by the way. I won't let you slander me like that.
I'm aware of that, but I don't look. There you go. That counts too. That's right. No, that looks good. All right. Let's use the code 5 at prizepicks.com. PrizePicks.com. And thanks to Everything Trade Shows. Have a good night.